I know some of you think that I am quite a hypocrite today. I just read this gospel passage about loving your neighbor as yourself, and yet I'm preaching and not Father Rob. So apparently I do love you, by the way, but I decided to once again inflict myself upon you instead of having Father Rob preach. So I said yesterday at Holy Mass that a classmate of mine from seminary was going to be with us at Holy Mass today. So this is Father Rob Yurkovich, who is from the Diocese of Marquette, which is the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is where my dad hails from. And in fact, it's so crazy because Father Rob, besides now serving as the diocesan exorcist, also serves as the head chaplain at the hospital in Escanaba. And my great uncle, Uncle Will, because he liked going to Mass at the hospital because the hospital Masses were really, really fast. Is this true?
They used to be.
That's actually hilarious. I just said, is that true? And he said, they used to be. Anyways, my Uncle Will used to serve as the lector at the hospital Masses. So just like a totally randomly small world that we all live in, isn't it, when we're Roman Catholics? But anyways, so our gospel passage actually says today that we are supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. And it was actually, so Father Rob and I, there are 100, how many guys are at SJV? How many guys are at SJV? Like 100? There are 100 some guys at SJV, at St. John Vianney Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. And we were actually literally next door neighbors to each other. And so last night, in the rectory, I was just like, oh, this is awesome. Father Rob and I were next door neighbors again because our rooms were right next to each other. And, but what does it mean in a very, very powerful sense to love your neighbor as yourself? There's a great tiny little book called Messy and Foolish. Dynamic Catholic publishes it, and it's very, very short. It's a short read. I would say it's probably 70 pages. And it was written by a young adult who went to World Youth Day in Rio de Janeiro in 2013. And Pope Francis at that World Youth Day, in his closing remarks, said, I want you to go back to your home diocese, and I want you to make a mess. I want you to mess things up. And Pope Francis was ultimately encouraging the young people he went on to further, I want you to go home and I want you to evangelize. I want you to stop doing what you've been doing, which is nothing. And I want you to go out and evangelize and bring people to church with you. And in doing so, it actually will make a mess. Because when you start bringing sinners and people with addictions and people in broken marriages, when you start bringing them back to the church, it's a mess. The book goes on to ultimately ask the question, how do you do this? How do you properly evangelize? And it puts forth the very, very simple project of just loving your neighbor. We've talked about this in other homilies. In fact, as crazy as this is liturgically, just so you know, not date-wise, but liturgically, 1 year ago on Friday of the third week of Lent, it would have been our second online Mass. Laetare Sunday last year, Rose Sunday during Lent, was the first Sunday in the 15-day shutdown to break the curve, to flatten the curve. So exactly a year ago, liturgically, because it's Laetare Sunday this year, if you remember, it wasn't until March 18th last year, but a year ago we were told we were going to flatten the curve by shutting down for 15 days. Nonetheless, in the homily that I preached that first Sunday, when we were shut down, I just made the proposal. What would our world look like if every single person reached out to the person who lives directly to their left, to their right, to their front, and to their back? Do you know their names? Do you know their struggles? Do you know if anybody there has cancer, is financially struggling, emotionally struggling, psychologically struggling? Do the four houses to your left, to your right, to your front, to your back, do they all go to Mass on Sunday? If they don't, like, that's your mission field. So often we focus on a mission field that's far away or distant or way too large from what it really needs to be, and just following what Jesus says to us, to love your neighbor as yourself. To truly knock on doors and to love our neighbors in a very truthful and profound way. So as we enter more deeply into this Lenten season, yesterday, Thursday, marked the 20th day of Lent, which means it's the exact halfway point of Lent. Are you more charitable? Are you more loving? Are you more patient? Are you more kind? But also, does all of the prayer, fasting, and almsgiving give us the courage, the fortitude, and the strength to actually go out and love our neighbor? Have we been more inviting, more encouraging in the past 20 days? And if not, as I always like to say, it's great, because we can always start over. And today can be day one. And that opportunity to say, okay, like I've been doing these things for Lent, or I've been doing Exodus 90, or I've been doing whatever, and today's the day to start over, and today's the day to really love my neighbor. Today's the day to all the more be who I'm called to be in a profound way. So let's make those adjustments, those changes in our lives to truly be the people we're called to be, and to make a mess of our world by loving our neighbor as ourselves. I'm going to make some announcements now instead of at the end of Mass, just because I want you to pray for these as well. So prayers today for a little boy. I've been subpoenaed to court to testify about a boy in our parish who has been sexually abused, and CDS has not only letters that I have written and phone calls that I have made to CDS, but also the adults and the parents and guardians that are involved. So I beg of you to pray for this little boy. There is corruption that's happening. There's families that are related to people that are in the court system of this young boy's life. So I just ask that you pray for this young boy, very, very much so today. So just please pray for that and for all victims. Tying into that, a year ago tomorrow, on the 13th, was the day that Father Hallowell had his first of 3 surgeries and began offering up his sufferings for the victims of sexual clergy abuse. So once again, a tie-in to the victims of abuse, and just ask that you pray for him all the more tomorrow. I know that you pray for him all the time, and it brings me, like, genuinely, like, the amount of people that are praying for him is unbelievable, but please continue to pray for him. He did receive good news yesterday. He had a blood test, and that was going to determine, so as the deeper that you go into chemo, the more that your body breaks down, and oftentimes your rounds of chemo need to be, like, spaced out longer because your body can't continue to take the chemo. And but thanks be to God, he found out yesterday from a blood test that there will not be a delay between the 5th and the 6th round, the final round of chemo, which is for him like a huge grace, because he just wants to get back to his parish. And so there was the expectation that he was going to be delayed, his chemo was going to be delayed 2 weeks. He would have to take an extra 2-week rest after the 5th round completes. So that is like a huge, huge grace. And like I could just see yesterday like a bigger sense of a fight in him, and the sense of like, yep, like the end is, he clearly has an end date now, where like up until yesterday, like the end date would have a variance of 2 weeks if they put him on hold. So I think like that's just like a huge grace and a huge relief. So please pray for him. And then I'm just gonna like give you a little excitement, because we like excitement. So he told me the other day that so there's all these like different things with liturgical norms and what's allowed and what's not allowed and all these things. And technically, although we did it all online last year, like priests are not supposed to celebrate the Triduum by themselves. Like it's like liturgically, it's like not like that's not what you do. So I just presumed that he was going to celebrate the Triduum like he does every day, like he celebrates Mass every day in the rectory very beautifully. It is so awesome. I'll like pop into the rectory to like say hello to him, and like I walk in and like the way that the rectory is set up, there's like the kitchen and then there's like a dining room and there's like glass doors that go into the chapel. And I'll walk into the kitchen and I'll like look through the dining room and he's like saying Mass, and it's just like I'm like, Mass is being celebrated in my house right now. Like it's so awesome. But anyways, he just told me the other day, he's just like, yeah, like just so you know, like I'm going to be joining you for the Triduum. How awesome is that? Like I'm just like, dude, we might need to get like police security because people are just going to like, they haven't seen you and like you haven't made a public appearance since like it's just going to be anyway. So I'm super excited. So he'll be with us on Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and the Easter Vigil. He most likely will not be with us on Easter Sunday because he can celebrate Mass by himself. But just to continue to pray and offer sacrifices for him, and once again, and tie into that, like, and pray for those who he's offering this all up for, which is for the victims of clergy abuse, for their healing, and for their families. Let us stand.